Hey Reddit, this is going to be a long one, and honestly, I'm still running on adrenaline and way too much whiskey, so forgive any typos. I needed to get this out somewhere because if I tell anyone in real life right now, I might actually get arrested. A little background. I'm Matt, 34M. My wife, let's call her Jessica, 32M, and I have been married for 5 years. We live in a high cost of living area, both working corporate jobs that suck the soul out of you. But hey, the money is good. Or it was. Jessica, man, I loved her, I really did. But she's always been a piece of work. She's drop-dead gorgeous, the kind of woman who stops traffic, and she knows it. But she's also incredibly high maintenance, bitchy if she doesn't get her way instantly, and honestly, a bit of a pathological liar, even about small things. If she said she had a salad for lunch, I'd assume she had a burger. Lately, though, her attitude had dialed up to an 11. She was constantly on my ass about my career progression. Why aren't you a director yet, Matt? Are you networking enough, Matt? You need to impress Mark more, Matt. Mark is my boss. Well, was my boss. A slick, 50-year-old dude with expensive suits and wandering eyes. Jessica suddenly developed a massive interest in my company's hierarchy. She started showing up to after-work drinks more often, always looking incredibly hot, always making a beeline to chat with Mark about my potential. I thought she was just being her usual pushy, ambitious self, trying to strong-arm me into a promotion. I was an idiot. The signs were all there. The late nights at the gym, even though her workout clothes didn't smell like sweat. The sudden need to put a passcode on her phone when she never had one before. The way she'd snap at me if I asked a simple question about her day, accusing me of being controlling. Our sex life tanked, obviously. Whenever I tried to initiate anything, she'd sigh like I was asking her to do my taxes. God, Matt, I'm tired. Can you just not be horny for 5 seconds? It made me feel like garbage. I just didn't realize how deep the rot went until last Tuesday. I didn't realize I was just a pawn in her twisted little corporate game. It happened on Tuesday evening. Jessica was in the shower. She takes these hour-long, scorching hot showers where she blasts music so she can't hear anything outside the bathroom. She'd left her iPad on the kitchen island. Usually it's locked tight. Face ID, complex passcode, the works. She guards that thing like it holds the nuclear launch codes. But she must have been in a rush or just got sloppy because the screen was still on, glowing in the dim kitchen light. I walked by to grab a glass of water and glanced down. I wasn't trying to snoop. I honestly just expected to see Amazon shopping carts or her Instagram feed. Instead, I saw a thumbnail of a dick. A gray, grainy photo of a dick that definitely wasn't mine. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might crack them. I froze. The smart thing to do would have been to confront her right then and there, but curiosity, or maybe masochism, took over. I touched the screen to keep it from sleeping and tapped on the gallery. It wasn't just one photo. It was a dedicated album. Timestamps going back 6 months. Jessica in black lace lingerie I'd never seen before. Jessica on her knees in a hotel room. I recognized the damn wallpaper. It was the Hyatt 2 blocks from my office. And there was Mark, my boss, the guy who shakes my hand every morning, asks about my weekend, and calls me sport. Seeing them having sex was gut-wrenching, but the photos weren't even the worst part. It was the screenshots of their texts she had saved. I guess she was keeping them as receipts or leverage? I don't know, but reading them made me physically throw up in my mouth.
It wasn't a romance. It was a transaction. Mark, you were incredible today. Best lunch break I've had in years. Jessica, I aim to please. So about Matt's performance review next week, is it done? Don't worry, I'll make sure he gets the full bonus. But you owe me for that one. That report he turned in was mediocre. I'll handle Matt. Just make sure he gets the senior manager title by Q3, or I stop visiting. Deal. Wear the red dress next time. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped the tablet. She wasn't just cheating on me because she was bored or horny. She was pimping herself out to manage my career. Every promotion, every good job from Mark, every bonus check I brought home thinking I earned it, it was all bought and paid for with my wife's body. She thought I was incompetent. She thought she had to fuck my boss to keep me employed.
I heard the water turn off upstairs. Panic set in. I quickly airdropped the entire folder to my phone, deleted the transfer notification, and put the iPad back exactly where she left it. I walked into the living room and sat in the dark, staring at the wall, feeling a rage so pure and white-hot, I thought I might actually burn the house down. She came downstairs 10 minutes later, wrapped in a plush white robe, looking fresh and smelling like expensive vanilla lotion. She didn't even look at me sitting in the dark. She just walked past me to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of sparkling water, and sighed loudly. "Jesus, Matt, why are you sitting in the dark like a serial killer? It's creepy," she snapped, cracking the bottle open. "Did you even load the dishwasher, or did you just sit there decomposing?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and it felt like the floor had dropped out from under the world. 5 minutes ago, she was my wife. Now she was this monster who was trading blowjobs for my quarterly bonuses. The nausea returned, violent and acidic. "I'm just tired," I managed to croak out. My voice sounded foreign, hollow. "Join the club," she rolled her eyes. "I had to deal with incompetent morons all day. You have no idea how hard I work to keep our lifestyle afloat." The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated balls on this woman. As she lectured me about the dishwasher, my brain was rapidly cross-referencing the dates from the photos on my phone with her schedule over the last 6 months. May 12th, she told me she was going to a Women in Leadership retreat in Napa for the weekend. The photos showed her and Mark in a jacuzzi suite. June 4th, she said her car broke down and she was waiting for AAA for 3 hours. There was a text from Mark at that exact time. "Can't believe you did that in the parking garage. You're crazy." July 20th, my birthday. She said she had a migraine and went to bed at 8 p.m. There was a selfie of her sending a kissy face to Mark, time-stamped 9:15 p.m. with the caption, "Hubby is pouting downstairs. Wish I was riding you instead." Wednesday and Thursday were an absolute blur of dissociated rage. I felt like I was piloting my own body from a control room inside my brain. I had to go into the office, sit 3 desks away from Mark's glass-walled office, and pretend I didn't know he'd been railing my wife in a hotel room I pass on my commute every day. When I walked in on Wednesday morning, Mark waved me over. "Hey, Matt, got a minute?" he called out, flashing that veneer of corporate camaraderie. I walked into his office. The smell of his cologne triggered a gag reflex because it was the same scent that had been lingering on Jessica's gym clothes for months. "How's the prep coming for Friday?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "The board is really looking for a vision, you know? We need to show them we're hungry." Hungry. I remembered a text from Jessica. "I'm hungry for you, Mark." "I'm on it," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was going to crack my face open. "I'm putting together a growth strategy that I think will really surprise everyone. It covers all our hidden assets." Mark winked. "That's my guy. Jessica tells me you've been stressed. Don't worry, if you nail this, I'll make sure the compensation committee takes care of you." It took every ounce of willpower I possessed not to grab the heavy crystal award on his desk and smash his teeth in. Instead, I nodded. "I appreciate that, Mark, really. You've always been generous." I went back to my desk and opened PowerPoint. This was the perfect setup. The quarterly board meeting isn't just internal. We have the external investors, the CEO, the entire C-suite, and the top-tier managers. Jessica works in a different department, marketing, but she was invited because she's part of the brand synergy team or whatever fluff title she has. She'd be there. Mark would be there. If I confronted them privately, they'd gaslight me. Mark would fire me for insubordination or some HR bullshit before I could prove anything. Jessica would cry, claim I was crazy, or say it was a one-time thing. They'd control the narrative. But if I did it live, in front of the people who sign their checks, there's no spinning that. I spent the next 48 hours crafting 2 presentations. Presentation A, a standard, boring, run-of-the-mill quarterly review. Lots of bar graphs, buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift. This was the one I showed Jessica when she demanded to see my progress on Thursday night. "Ideally, you'd have more data on slide 3, she critiqued, sipping wine while I worked at the dining table. "But I guess it's fine. Just don't stutter, Matt. You know you stutter when you're nervous. It makes you look weak. I won't stutter, I promised. Presentation B, the masterpiece. It started the same. Title slide, agenda, Q2 financials. But slide 4 was where the magic happened. I transferred the receipts from my phone to the company server, hiding them in a nested folder labeled old_logs do not delete. I carefully curated the selection. I needed a narrative arc. Image 1, the screenshot of Jessica offering sex for my promotion. Image 2, a photo of them kissing in the elevator, timestamped during work hours. Image 3, a very explicit, undeniable photo of the act itself from the hotel room. I practiced the transition. Click, click, boom. I slept like a baby on Thursday night. Jessica was tossing and turning, probably worrying about her own presentation or maybe texting Mark. I didn't care. I lay there listening to her breathe, thinking about how this was the last night I'd ever have to share a bed with her. Tomorrow, I wasn't just presenting a report. I was presenting a demolition.
Friday morning arrived with gray skies and a heavy drizzle, which felt appropriate. The air in the house was thick with tension. Jessica was in war mode. She was up at 5 a.m., curling her hair, applying makeup with surgical precision. She wore a power suit, sharp crimson blazer, black pencil skirt, heels that could puncture a tire. She looked formidable. She looked like the kind of woman who owned the room. And she was treating me like an accessory she was afraid would clash with her outfit. "Matt, seriously, check your tie," she snapped as I came downstairs. She reached out and yanked it straight, practically choking me. "You look tired. Did you put on eye cream like I told you? You have bags." "I'm fine, Jess," I said, batting her hand away gently. "Just focused." "Well, focus harder. Mark texted me this morning. The CEO is in a mood. Don't screw this up for us. We need that bonus for the Aspen trip." The Aspen trip, right. The one she'd been planning for months. I wondered if she'd planned to invite Mark to accidentally bump into us on the slopes. We drove to work separately. I needed the time alone to get my head right. I blasted heavy metal the entire way. System of a Down, Slayer, anything to drown out the voice in my head screaming at me to turn the car around and flee the state. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. When I got to the office, the atmosphere was buzzing. The boardroom, the glass box, was being prepped. Caterers were setting up expensive pastries and coffee urns. A massive screen dominated one wall. I went to my desk and loaded my files onto the presentation laptop. File, open, growth strategy, final v2.pptx. I checked the clicker, batteries full. I checked the HDMI connection, crystal clear. Mark walked by my cubicle around 9:30 a.m. He looked slick, smelling of mint and arrogance. "Big day, sport. You ready to knock their socks off?"
The first 3 slides were exactly what everyone expected. Slide 1, title slide. Q4 Strategic Growth and Asset Allocation. Clean, professional font. Slide 2, a graph showing a slight dip in Q3 efficiency. I spoke about identifying bottlenecks and resource mismanagement. Heads nodded around the table. Slide 3, a pie chart about departmental budget distribution. As you can see, I said, pointing the laser pointer at a large blue slice, management overhead accounts for a significant portion of our expenditure. But the question is, are we getting value for that overhead? Mark nodded sagely. Excellent point, Matt. Value is key. Jessica was actually typing on her phone under the table, probably texting Mark about how boring I was being. The room was quiet. The hum of the projector fan was the only sound besides my voice. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, making my vision strangely sharp. I noticed everything. The smudge on the glass wall, the way the CEO was tapping his pen, the exact shade of lipstick Jessica was wearing, the same shade she wore in the photo from May 12th. However, I continued, my voice dropping an octave, sometimes the most significant losses aren't financial. They're ethical, they're structural, and they come from leadership failing to prioritize the company's integrity over personal gratification. The CEO stopped tapping his pen. He frowned slightly. This wasn't standard corporate speak. I've conducted a deep dive audit into a specific partnership that has been consuming a lot of company time and resources, I said. I looked directly at Mark. His smile faltered just a fraction. He looked confused. I looked at Jessica. She finally looked up from her phone, sensing the shift in tone. Her eyes narrowed. I call this case study the cost of promotion. My finger hovered over the right arrow key on the clicker. The silence in the room grew heavy, confused. People shifted in their expensive chairs. Slide 4, I announced. I pressed the button. Part 7, the climax, the presentation. The screen flickered for a millisecond, and then, in high-definition 4K glory, the image filled the wall. It wasn't a graph, it wasn't a spreadsheet, it was a screenshot of the text conversation. The font was massive. You couldn't miss it. Mark, don't worry, I'll make sure he gets the full bonus, but you owe me for that one. Jessica, I'll handle Matt. Just make sure he gets the senior manager title by Q3, or I stop visiting. A gasp rippled through the room. It wasn't loud. It was the sound of 20 people simultaneously inhaling in shock. "What is this?" someone whispered. I didn't stop. I clicked again. Image 2. The photo of Jessica and Mark in the Hyatt hotel room. Jessica in the black lace lingerie straddling Mark on the edge of the bed. His face was clearly visible. Her face was clearly visible. The company logo was even visible on Mark's discarded jacket in the corner.
The silence shattered. "Oh my God," the HR director choked out. Mark jumped out of his chair so fast it tipped over with a loud crash. "Matt, turn that off now," he screamed, his face turning a violent shade of purple. Jessica let out a sound I'd never heard from a human being, a high-pitched shriek of pure panic. She scrambled to stand up, knocking her water glass onto the table. "That's fake! That's AI! He's lying!" she screeched, pointing a trembling finger at me. I clicked again. Image 3. A close-up selfie Jessica had taken in the mirror of the office bathroom, this office bathroom, with Mark kissing her neck, his hand down her blouse. The timestamp was 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, work hours. "Turn it off!" Mark lunged toward the laptop, but the COO, a former linebacker, actually stood up and blocked him. "Sit down, Mark," the COO growled. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, hadn't moved. He was staring at the screen, his face unreadable, like stone. Then he slowly turned his gaze to Mark, then to Jessica, and finally to me. "Continue, Matt," Mr. Henderson said softly. His voice cut through the chaos like a knife. Mark froze. Jessica was hyperventilating, clutching the edge of the table, her face drained of all color. I looked at the board members. Their eyes were wide, darting between the screen and the adulterers. The shock was absolute. I took a deep breath. This was it. The line. The room was vibrating with a strange energy, half horror, half morbid fascination. Mark was slumped in his chair, defeated, head in his hands. Jessica was sobbing, mascara running down her face, looking like a melting painting. I didn't feel nervous anymore. I felt lighter than air. I felt like a god of destruction. I looked at the screen one last time, at the grotesque evidence of their betrayal looming over the mahogany table where we usually discussed quarterly targets and synergies. I cleared my throat. I turned to the CEO, Mr. Henderson, and then scanned the faces of the investors. I kept my face completely deadpan, channeling every ounce of corporate stoicism I had learned over the last decade. "Now, if we look at the data," I said, gesturing casually to the image of my wife on her knees in front of my boss, "we usually analyze ROI, return on investment." I paused for effect. As you can see on slide 4, my wife's investment in this manager was deep but unproductive. I clicked to the next slide. It was a single line of text. "I resign." The yield on this partnership, I added, closing the laptop with a sharp snap, was 0. In fact, it was a liability, and I'm removing that liability from my portfolio effective immediately. I pulled the HDMI cable out. The screen went black, plunging the room back into the dim reality of the boardroom. "Any questions?" I asked. Part 9, the immediate aftermath. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Mr. Henderson stood up. He didn't look at me. He looked at Mark. "Mark," Henderson said, his voice quiet and terrifying. "Get your things. Security will escort you out in 5 minutes. If you are still in this building in 6, I will have you arrested for gross misconduct and misappropriation of company resources." Mark tried to stammer something. "Sir, it's complex. Get out," Henderson barked. Mark scrambled up and practically ran out of the room, looking like a whipped dog. Then there was Jessica. She was staring at me, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and pure hatred. She stood up, her legs shaking. "Matt," she hissed,
her voice trembling. You psychopath. You just ruined my career. You ruined everything. Do you have any idea what you've done? She wasn't sorry. Even then, with her nudes on the board screen, she wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry I broke her toys. She was sorry I stopped playing the game. I know exactly what I did, Jessica, I said, picking up my bag. I gave you the spotlight you always wanted. You wanted to be famous in the company? Congratulations. You're a legend now. I'm going to sue you, she screamed, lunging at me. I'm going to take the house. I'm going to take everything. The HR director stepped in front of her. Jessica, you're an external contractor. Your contract is terminated immediately. Please leave the premises before we call the police. Jessica looked around the room, searching for an ally. She found none. The women looked at her with disgust. The men wouldn't meet her eyes. She was radioactive. She let out a frustrated sob, grabbed her purse, and stormed out, clicking her heels violently against the floor. I looked at Mr. Henderson. He was still standing there. He looked at me, and for a split second I saw something in his eyes. Respect. Pity? Maybe a bit of fear. Matt, he said, we could discuss a severance package, an NDA. No need, I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. Consider this my notice. I'll mail back my badge. I walked out of the boardroom. I walked past Mark's office, where he was frantically throwing things into a box while a security guard watched him. I walked past the reception desk. I walked out the front doors and into the rain. I got in my car, turned the key, and just sat there for a minute, listening to the engine hum. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from rage. It was from relief. It was over. I had nuked the site from orbit, and it was beautiful.
Update 3 days later. So that was Friday. It's now Monday. I'm currently sitting on my back porch, drinking a beer at 11 a.m., watching a squirrel try to break into a bird feeder. I'm unemployed, soon to be divorced, and likely blacklisted from my specific industry in this city. And I have never felt more peaceful in my entire life. Here is the fallout. Mark. He's done. Word travels fast in our industry. He didn't just get fired, he got incinerated. I heard through a friend in IT that his wife, who comes from old money, kicked him out the same night. He's apparently staying at a Motel 6 near the airport. Jessica. She's currently staying at her parents' house. She's been blowing up my phone nonstop. It's a fascinating case study in narcissism. The texts oscillate wildly between, "Baby, please, we can fix this. It was just a mistake. You ruined my life, you spiteful prick. I miss you. I'm so lonely. My lawyer will destroy you." I haven't replied to a single one. My lawyer, a shark of a woman named Barbara, told me to block her on everything and route all communication through her office. Barbara laughed for 5 solid minutes when I told her what I did at the meeting. She said, "Matt, usually I tell clients not to antagonize the spouse, but in this case, bravo."
Since Jessica's career was built entirely on networking and perception, she's radioactive now. No one wants to hire the woman who slept with the boss and got exposed on a projector screen. As for me, I'm packing up the house. I'm selling it. Too many bad memories. I'm taking my half of the equity and I'm going to travel for a bit. Maybe go to Europe. Maybe just drive a van into the woods. I don't know yet. I realized something important sitting in that boardroom. I spent 5 years trying to be the man Jessica wanted. I tried to be the corporate climber, the provider, the power couple half. I ignored every red flag because I was afraid of losing her. I was afraid of being alone. But looking at her face when that slide went up, I realized I didn't lose anything. You can't lose something that was never yours. Jessica didn't belong to me. She belonged to the highest bidder. She was just using me as a safety net while she swung for the next branch. My advice to anyone reading this: if your gut tells you something is wrong, it is. If she starts hiding her phone, worry. If she suddenly cares about your career progression more than your happiness, run. And if you find out she's cheating, don't just get sad. Don't just get mad. Get even. Some people say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. Sometimes putting their dirty laundry on a 4K projector screen in front of the C-suite executives is the best revenge. I might not have a job, but I walked out of that building with my spine straight. Thanks for reading. I'm going to go refill my beer. TLDR. Found out my wife was sleeping with my boss to get me promoted/fired. I hijacked the quarterly board meeting and showed the board of directors her nude texts and photos as part of my growth strategy. Boss fired, wife ruined, I'm free.